Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to the Jon Gaunt podcast. The title today, Southport Atrocity Fallout. Did silence from Keir Starmer and the police fuel the riots or add to the riots? It's a very controversial subject, and in the aftermath of that Southport atrocity and the violent unrest that followed, a growing number of voices, not just me, but lots of people, including legal experts and counter-terrorism advisors, are questioning whether the government's lack of transparency helped to ignite the very violence they aimed to prevent. Now, I'm sure you've got a view on this. Try and keep it polite if you can, because it is such a sensitive subject. This video will examine the official report that came out yesterday or the day before from the Chief Inspector of Constabulary. Some people are trying to blame the police. He's not having it. Criticism of Prime Minister Keir Starmer's crisis response. Now, I know a lot of you share my criticism that he didn't help matters. The role of misinformation and the consequences of the information vacuum that Starmer and Yvette Cooper created. Public perception of policing bias and why that matters. You know, a lot of white working class people seem to think that people of colour get treated differently. I would imagine people of colour think that white people do as well, but it's a perception. It's got to be spoken about. Allegations of unfair imprisonment and the tragic consequences, including the man who committed suicide in prison. I'll also propose some constructive steps forward so these things hopefully never happen again, including a review of prosecutions. That's what we need. All those people who are in jail, should they be in jail? A public inquiry into the communications failure. Why didn't the coppers tell us more, or why didn't Starmer? And reforms to police disclosure protocols, what they can and cannot say because of contempt of court. This is a sensitive and complex topic. I thought about not opening up the line so that people could have their say. Then I thought, no, people must be able to say what they want to say. But I would ask you, please be sensible. So we've got to handle this with care and respect. The goal is not to inflame in this video, but to inform, because I think a lot of you will have not seen this report that came out yesterday. It's kind of got buried under the Pope, under Trump, the American trade deal, everything else, right? But it's vital. We need to know what went wrong in Southport. So we're going to have this conversation that everybody else is avoiding, and please join in and help me. If you want to join in later, if you're watching on replay or listening on a podcast, I still value your comments. You know what to do. We're on Twitter, we're on X, we're on Facebook, and of course, we're on Jon Gaunt TV on YouTube. If you like what we're talking about, or I'm talking about, please press the like button. It really helps. I'm going to read out the names of people who've been donating money later in the show. But let's get going. So welcome back to the channel, Jon Gaunt TV. So it's a very serious subject we're diving into, and of course, immensely politically sensitive. The aftermath of the Southport atrocity. 3 little girls slaughtered at a Taylor Swift concert. What did the government know before? What do they know afterwards? And why didn't they tell us? Was a lack of government transparency actually making things worse? What do they say? Sunlight is the best disinfectant. I agree. Transparency. Be transparent. This isn't about, though, scoring political points, although I think there is a lot of blame to put on that man's shoulders there, Keir Starmer. I want to talk about justice. I want to talk about trust, and asking whether silence from those in power created the perfect storm or added to the perfect storm, which then led to those violent protests and riots. Did him calling everybody a far-right thug cause a problem? If you've got a comment to make it, and I'll come to them later in the show. So, the atrocity. What was known? Well, when the Southport atrocity happened, it, of course, shocked the entire nation, if not the world. But let me tell you, this is not disputed now. Within hours, authorities, the police, the Prime Minister, maybe even the leader of the opposition, knew crucial facts about that attacker, the madman, Axel Rudakubana. They knew for a fact he wasn't a migrant and just arrived. They knew for a fact that he wasn't a practicing Muslim. They knew for a fact he was nearly 17 and he therefore wasn't really a child. In a week or so, he would no longer be a child. And crucially, they would have known within the first day, certainly the first 48 hours, I suggest the first day, that they'd found ricin and a terror manual at his home. I also suggest they would have known that Reform had seen him 3 times and failed to act 3 times before he murdered those girls and injured 10 others and ruined their lives forever. Despite all of this, the government said very little. The Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, claimed that releasing information could prejudice any future trial. And on one level, he's right. But then the legal experts came out and said, that's nonsense. They debunked that excuse, especially when 3 months later, he released all of the facts, all of them. And the trial hadn't happened at that point. What was he doing? Was he withholding? Was he being too cautious? Let's look at his early comments. Thank you, Jane. I'll come to you in a moment. The day after the incident, do you remember he went up unannounced and he laid a wreath? Some people started calling him a winker, I think it was, and he beat a hasty retreat. Starmer, at that day or just after that, claimed that the riots, it's on the record, he can't dispute it, were orchestrated by organised gangs. Something now which has been disproven. And this hasn't been in the mainstream media, really. I think the Telegraph ran it and the Mail, but no one's really gone on this. The Chief Inspector of Constabulary has said that's not true. They weren't organised gangs. He also says it's not true that they came from outside on trains and buses. He says that all the riots that happened all over the country, the people who did it were very local. So this idea that there's a big conspiracy and it was the far right seems to be untrue. Maybe Sir Keir Starmer was given the wrong information. But then he went further, didn't he? He then called everybody who was protesting in Southport, and by this time across the country, far right thugs. Now, it's undoubtedly true. There would have been some people in those riots who had extremist links. And there'll be some people who went completely over the top. The idea of burning people out and all the rest of that, horrid. They deserve to go to prison. But many, may I even hazard a guess, the majority, and that's certainly what the police are suggesting, were just ordinary working class people who were angry, confused, and felt they'd been lied to again. This kind of sweeping language of Keir Starmer, I said it at the time, doesn't calm tensions, it inflames them. It absolutely inflames them because no one wants to be called a far-right racist or a thug, especially if they're not. Why did he do that? And why did he think he had the right to do that? That's not the... And then he said he didn't really want to understand why people were protesting. He just wanted to get them locked up as quickly as possible. We'll go on to that in a couple of moments. So then the misinformation. With no clear, verified information. Remember what I just said a moment ago. So Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper knew on day one who Axel was. They knew he wasn't a Muslim. They knew he was from Rwanda. Why didn't they say to the public, listen, it's not a new migrant. He's not a Muslim. We can't say much more at the moment because of the position of contempt of court. By the same token, the chief constable, evidently she wanted to say more. She was silenced. Is that the kind of country you want to live in? Because it's not the country that I love, I believe in. I'd like your views. Start typing and let me hear what you think about this. So with no clear, as I say, no clear verified information from officials, the vacuum was filled by online conspiracy theories, emotional reactions. We know what Scousers are like. They're very emotional, and rightly so, and working class people. And also there was rage. Can't deny it. But in short, I'm suggesting, and so is the constabulary chief, that this silence created or helped to create the storm, i.e. the riots. Not only that, Keir Starmer's own czar, government czar on terrorism, the main guy about terrorism, he said, you can't leave an information vacuum. You've got to tell people. The chief inspector in his report, which again, this should be leading the news at the moment, he says the police need to work more closely with the mainstream media, the newspapers, the BBC, ITV, Sky, etc., to counter this fake news. But here's the issue and the bit that he's missing. Most people don't trust the mainstream, lamestream media anymore. They don't watch BBC News or Sky News anymore. They talk on the internet, on YouTube. I've been absolutely amazed since I've started doing YouTube how many people get their information from channels like this. They don't trust the media. They don't buy newspapers anymore, so there's no point even putting it in there. So I do believe the chief inspector has got that wrong. The only way to counter this is disinfectant. Be absolutely transparent. There are obviously some things you might not have said about the ricin, but you would have said that he wasn't a migrant, because that would have calmed things down a bit, wouldn't it? What do you think? So then what we had instead was swift justice, although it increasingly looks like unfair justice, no justice. The government, Starmer, and he was the main man behind this, along with Yvette Cooper, they moved fast to arrest and imprison dozens of people involved in the riots. They even had the judges on the telly handing out the sentences. Many people got 3 years or 2 years. And they would have been told by the duty solicitor who's representing them, if you cough for this and then just say, yes, I'm guilty, you'll get 40% off your sentence. So instead of doing 3, you'll probably do 2. Good behavior, it might even be less. Many of these people, not all of them, would never have been in trouble with the police, probably never inside a police cell or even a police station. They would have been petrified. So they coughed for it. I don't think that justice, rushed justice, is justice. I really don't. Every one of them should have had the duty solicitor and the time to decide if they wanted to plead guilty or not. Bamboozling them isn't the answer. And then we compare and contrast that, do we, to the 2 lads in Manchester Airport? Or what about Ricky, whatever his name is, the Labour councillor who talked about slitting the throats of people? He's not even been up in court yet. It keeps getting pushed back. The Manchester guys, it took forever, didn't it? I'm just saying that stinks of 2-tier justice. Do you agree or not? And then, of course, it got worse, because one poor man who wasn't the most stable, I think we've got to say that, he committed suicide whilst he was in prison. Now, if that doesn't raise a serious concern with you, I don't know what can. Because when prosecutions move faster than the truth, we have got to ask, were these people punished to restore order, listen to this, or to cover failure? Were they punished to restore order or to cover failure, or also to make Keir Starmer look tough? Because I tell you, after this, everybody was watching their P's and Q's. People were petrified to write anything on Facebook, say things on YouTube. That's not the kind of society I want to live in. By the same token, I don't want people like today coming on and libeling people and slandering people. That's not on either. But that isn't the answer. And the copper, the head of the constabulary, the man who's been inspecting this, he says the way to do it is through the mainstream media. It's not. He also wants Ofcom to get involved. Oh, no. And he says that these posts should be taken down quicker. That's a very, very grey, dangerous area. Let's go on to bias in the police, or the perception of bias, because it looks to me as if Starmer's trying to blame the coppers now. It's everyone but him, isn't it? Whether it's true or not, and I'm going to say something now that some people will misquote me on and try and get me closed down for saying this. But I'm going to say it because it's the truth of what's happening out there. Whether it's true or not, many people feel that when a violent offender is white, the police give full details immediately. 6'4", white guy, da-da-da-da-da. When the suspect is black, Asian, a migrant, possibly Muslim, possibly a terrorist, they suddenly go quiet. Why? And it happens too many times to be just a coincidence, doesn't it? And even if it's not totally true, the reason I'm talking about it is because ordinary people are talking about it. And the mainstream media, the lamestream, they won't touch this. Well, I'm touching it. And that's why I need your support. If we're going to talk about serious things that affect this country, I need your support. If you want to do that today, why don't you buy me a coffee? www.buymeacoffee.com/Jon Gaunt. Let me tell you about all the people who did some money for me this week. Charlie M, he bought me 3 coffees. Andy George, 3. Carl Eves, 3. Leslie Clark, 3. Niven Casey, 3. Thank you, each and every one of you. And then people are giving me super thanks, super chat, and super stickers on YouTube. You just press the button, evidently, while you're watching the video. Dale Whiteman, a couple of quid. Denise Deacon, a £5. Kevin Phillips, 150. Steve, a £5. Blue Van Man, 3 quid. Steve's given about 5 fivers, actually. Dormston Cook, he's our record holder at the moment. He's donated over 60 quid to keep these podcasts going. Daz Wellens, 3 quid, and I think he did some more as well. And Seasider Mark, if you can afford it, you don't have to. If you can afford it, chuck me a few bob, would you please? Because I'm going to be doing more videos like this. And as I say, today I was going to close it and have no comments. I'm trusting you in a minute when I come to the comments to be sensible. Let's not give people the ammunition to close us down. Anyway, going back to this perception. Perception matters, especially in the modern world of the internet. It's not about racism. It's about consistency, transparency, and trust. And making sure we don't have a 2-tier justice system in 2-tier Keir's country. And as I say, that big word that matters the most, trust. I say that trust is broken. Do you agree with me? So, what needs to change? Where do we go from here? Well, I say immediately there should be a full review of every single, even if they're as guilty as hell and a right thug, I want every sentence during those riots investigated and looked at to make sure they're sound and that the people have the right to defend themselves. Do you understand where I'm coming from? I want a full public inquiry into the government's communication failure, i.e., why didn't they tell us? Look, we know who it is. He ain't a migrant. Just stop all this nonsense now. Ignore the internet. That's the only way. You've got to do what Trump did yesterday and what Farage does. You can't just go through the mainstream media. Nobody watches it anymore or trusts it or believes it. You're going to go over the head of them via the internet, via YouTube, via X, via Facebook, and talk to people directly. Haven't you? Anyway, so that's what needs to happen. We need police reform around public disclosure. We need to look at the whole idea of contempt of court in the modern world. It isn't the same where we used to have newspapers. That's why this guy's got it wrong. He thinks if you talk to the main newspapers and the BBC and Sky, you'll solve the problem. You won't. Most people do not get their news anymore in that way. And then we need community engagement, not just press statements. The police, the courts, the government need to talk to people, but all people. And they need to listen and hear them. So as I say, the goal here in this video wasn't to blame, it's to learn. And now I want to learn from you. I want your views now, please. When governments try to manage or mould the truth, they lose the public. I thought Keir Starmer would know this by now, the amount of cock-ups he's made. And when people feel as if they're being ignored or unheard, they get angry. And after Southport, they got really blooming angry. So what we need is honesty, not spin. Transparency, not silence. And we need leaders who trust the public, not fear them. Because I feel that Labour are scared that I'm going to say it again, that the white working class will create a civil war. Well, one thing's for sure, Keir, if you carry on going down this line, you make that possibly happen. No one wants that. No one wants it. But we want fair, one-tier justice for everybody. Now, if you found this video helpful, thought-provoking, or it just made you really angry and you disagree with me, please press the button, subscribe, and join in the conversation in the comments at the bottom. Then we can keep this conversation going. Or now, send me your comments, because I'm coming over to you now, and I'm now going to read out your views and move the discussion on. That's my interpretation of what's gone on with Southport. I'd like you to give me your views now. This is the Jon Gaunt Show. I'm here Monday to Thursday, normally at 6:30. I'm not here on a Friday normally, but I got wound up about this today. And the reason I'm not doing it at 6:30, well, it's obvious. The mighty Sky Blues Coventry City are going to be busy beating Middlesbrough later, hopefully, to get into the playoff finals. So I'm not around later is what I'm saying. All right, so we can have that conversation now. If you want to donate in any way, shape or form, either with a super chat, a super sticker, or what's the other one called? I can't remember what the other one's called. Do it, or buy me a coffee. I think the amount of work I've put in this week, I deserve at least a fiver of anybody's money. Right, let's go. Facebook, Jane Ainger. Definitely the inaction at Southport led to the riots. It was them screaming for justice. And knowing this boy's ethnicity was kept quiet. Yeah, I don't know why, because he's Rwandan stock. Well, he was born in this country, so they could have nipped it in the bud. But then when they did say who he was or what he was, Jane, unfortunately, they then said he's from Cardiff. They made out if he was just a Welsh boy. Again, this winds up people. We need to restore trust. Ray Wallbank says 100% it did, and the police, as usual, fueled it. Well, I don't know if it's the police or is it the politicians. Unlike when it's others of a certain religion. No, Ray, I think this happens across the board, but I know where you're coming from. Thank you for your comments. They did the same back at Hillsborough. That's an interesting thing. That's Dan Tag. It fueled it. Took part back then. It seems to be a tactic to divide the nation. Well, I've got some sympathy with your opinion on that, because I've been saying to a large extent the whole idea, the threat of terrorism and the threat of migrants and the bogeyman is used by the establishment to set us, the working class, against each other. Yeah, I do have sympathy with that. And with Hillsborough, I know exactly what you're trying to say. And yes, I worked for the Sun. I thought the headline was disgraceful. I wasn't on the Sun then, and I don't understand why that apology hasn't been accepted. Maybe it just hasn't been strong enough by Kelvin McKenzie, but I don't want to get distracted into that. But there are other instances where this happens. Transparency is what we need. Sunlight. I think that quote's by some French bloke, isn't it? Sunlight is the best disinfectant. Anybody know where that's from? Let me know. Carl Eves. Oh, he's a cop. Well, let me put yours up, Carl. As an ex-old Bill, he's a copper, they would have known about these details in a very short space of time. Their silence definitely caused the problems. Well, I don't know if it caused the problems, but it certainly made them worse, Carl. And, I know somebody who works in the Secret Service, and he said the same thing. He said it was just ludicrous. How did Starmer think keeping it quiet helped in any way, shape, or form? And, of course, we all know Rudakubana, whatever his name is, he was as guilty as hell. There was never going to be a trial in that sense, was there? Just while on the same subject, I'd have dragged him up by his fingernails or his eyelashes so he could hear his sentence. I thought that was a disgrace that he didn't have to do that. But we'll talk about that on another day. Nothing will be done about it, says slapping a lady's bottom. There never is when our betters are the ones in the wrong. Now, that I like that because you're right. It's like the establishment, isn't it? They're not going to go against themselves. I think you could be right. Even if he wasn't involved, David Lammy should be arrested and jailed too. Just because. See, this is where I didn't want people to be stupid. I wanted people to be sensible, and you're being stupid. Why do you want to arrest David Lammy? I don't want that, right? I want us to have grown-up conversations. I thought long and hard about this. I don't want to ruin my career again by people saying ridiculous things. I'll have an apology off you, mate. Giovanni Martinelli, his father was a child soldier in Afghanistan who specializes in ricin. I doubt 17-year-olds could make it alone. Well, we don't know the truth of that. There were these allegations. There was even allegations that Keir Starmer had represented his dad. None of that was substantiated. I'm just saying it. And it takes us off somewhere else. Let's not go there. Let's just laser focus on, did the silence make it worse? Government should have filled the vacuum, nipped it in the bud. But on the other hand, don't believe all you hear from the vacuum fillers, says Craig. Yeah, fair enough. That's a fair point. Thank you for your comments. There's been two-tier policing for over 50 years, says James Stone. I think it has been going on for some time, but it's got to stop. We can't have two-tier policing. We can't have two-tier justice. No matter the colour of your skin, your religion, your sexual preference, everybody should be treated the same. Yes? You're watching, listening to the Jon Gaunt Show. Don't forget, we're also on all the podcast platforms, and you can listen to it again, walk the dog, and when you're walking the dog. I'm back on Monday, don't forget, for a show, although I've got a feeling I'll probably do one Sunday afternoon if I've got over my hangover. Jenny Murphy says, Ricky Jones got voted back in again. He shouldn't have been allowed to stand. I must admit, Jenny, that passed me by. I didn't know that. Isn't he in prison? Or is he on remand at the moment? He might be on bail. I don't know. I thought it was disgusting what he said. And I want justice to be served there, just like I did with the Manchester guys from the airport. Chopper MK50 is back with us. He says they've clearly got a narrative, and the truth shows that that narrative to be nonsense. So they manipulate communication channels to suit their agenda. I agree. Blair's this one about? Blair's wife was his HR, human rights lawyer, and Tony was advisor for Pakistan. Fact. Well, it might be the fact, Giovanni, but we're not talking about Tony Blair. So would you mind just parking that for a minute? Come back to me with the evidence at some point, not during a live show, and we'll discuss it. Whenever there's an atrocity, says Carl Eves, ex-copper, so we need to listen to what he has to say about this. Our response as police was always to protect the mosques, etc., to a non-existent threat by the indigenous population. That's kind of what I was suggesting earlier, Carl. Other than police, the perpetrators. That annoys people too. I think that's a fair point. And that perception is there. But don't forget also, at Southport, men and women of all colours and all religions and all sexualities went out and cleared up the streets afterwards and helped that mosque that got damaged. Again, disinfectant. That's what we need. Transparency. Seeking says, yes, there was a vacuum. And then he says, government deliberately suppressed details. BP makes a nice point. Have a listen to this. gaslighting the public more than silence. I think that could be true. That be true? Seeking, would you mind awfully from now on writing more than one sentence? You've got about 15 texts in front of me, and it's just annoying. Make your point in a coherent way in 4 or 5 lines. Don't send loads of text, because I'm not going to read them all out, because I've got to be fair to everybody. Yeah. Weld hard, 100% as usual. It's a cover-up. Well, what's it a cover-up of? Of the establishment's mistakes? I think increasingly that's what it looks like with Prevent. They had 3 opportunities to take this lad off the streets. 3 times they failed. 10 times he was chucked out of school. And it isn't just those 3 girls who died and their parents and their families and what they're going through. It's all the others whose whole life now will be dominated by this one violent childhood trauma that they were involved in. I mean, well, you know where I stand on this. The death penalty is the only sentence. Not to deter, but there's no point in keeping him alive, in my opinion. But separate issue, we're not going to go there tonight. Dan Tag says, judges need reminding they are employees and only have power over those that give consent. That is a very good point indeed. A very good point indeed. Our MPs need to remember that. They serve us, but they forget. They forget. Like yesterday, Starmer's bigging himself up. Trump has given him nothing. I've looked at the detail of that trade deal today. It's a joke. He's basically stitched him up like a kipper. Absolute. He's our leader. Did you see what he looked like yesterday? He was petrified. Craig, I'm not reading it out because you're trying to distract me and I'm not interested. Civil service are lefty activists, white middle-class liberals, says Seeking. Now, see, now you're making a good point. Not necessarily I agree with you. Oh, sorry. I'm in trouble now, aren't I? Craig Urquhart, I've got to apologise. I apologise profusely because he said Sunderland, mate. So I thought he was saying Sunderland are going to beat Coventry. But what I said earlier was I said that we're playing Middlesbrough, and we're not. We're playing Sunderland, Coventry City. So that's the end of the football talk. So I apologise for that. I was wrong. Denise Deacon, everyone should be treated equally, John. You can't protect some and not others. I'm with you 100%. It is creating a 2-tier system where white working class are treated differently. Well, that's because they think we, the white working class, are animals. That's the only kind of conclusion you can come up to. Do you understand what come to? Yeah. Seeking, I know I've only just told you a minute ago, but you've now got 3 more texts. I'm not reading them out. I'm not reading them out because I've asked you to put them into a coherent argument so that everybody is fair, fairly treated. Right? We're not having 2-tier phoning on the Jon Gaunt show. I think that multi-cut, this is Jane. See, Jane's been on once already, but she's making another point, and so she's on again. But I'm not going to keep saying, oh, it's so-so, and the same person. Yeah, don't need to. We're building the audience, guys. I think that multiculturalism is well over now because of the lack of trust and because our money is being taken from us and given to the illegal migrants. And Starmer's not listening to the British people, which is causing a lot of anger. And the new leading at Stockport has fueled that anger, not just there, but for the whole country. But everyone isn't treated the same as they. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, but this is the danger, isn't it? What these liberals do, what people like the Human Rights Brigade, which Keir Starmer absolutely exemplifies, they cause more trouble than they solve. Because if people think they're having their PISS taken out of them, they get angry. And I think that's what happened in Southport. Let's be fair. I don't agree with everything that Denise just said, by the way, but there we are. Not necessarily. I don't have the same head of knowledge as yourself. Why on earth should I be treated the same as you? We're both unique and individual. Equality in law and the right to life. I don't know what that's on about. Are you talking to me? Or are you talking to somebody else? That's Dantag. I don't know what you're trying to say there, but thank you very much indeed for it. I know I mean, the complication of doing this kind of type of phoning as it is that you've got to type as quickly as you can, and sometimes you can't keep up with your thought process. I understand. Overall, though, I hope you've enjoyed what I've talked about today, because I didn't know whether to bring this subject up. But the question we're asking is, did silence fuel those riots? I think my conclusion is it didn't stop them, did it? And I think it certainly added to it. Of course, you got to say the riot started by those yobbos who wanted to burn out people out of those hotels. But by not giving people the right information, it doesn't help, does it? Thank you. The likes are up at 8 now. It would be nice to get to 10 if we possibly could. But I'm going to finish any minute now. I'll take a few more comments if you want to give them to me. I just want equality. I just want it to be fair. And I don't want this nonsense. I mean, it's interesting, wasn't it? The Iranians, and now they reckon a planned attack on the Israeli embassy in our country, right? And what I don't really understand is they've been so open about that. Is that as a result of all this nonsense recently? Let's hope they're going to carry on being transparent. Thistle says multiculturalism only works if the minority integrates. Well, I think it does work to a large extent in this country. I think the majority of migrants who have come and lived here have integrated. The majority, they have. Whether the Poles, the Jews, whatever, Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, they have integrated. I mean, that's one of the things that was interesting about VE Day and the celebrations. The reminder that we had Indian and Asian people fighting with us in the British Army. One other point, John. This is a very good point. Chopper MK50. One other point is that those counter-protests were all eerily similar, weren't they? I said this at the time, my friend. The same banners, the same chants, the same locations. Yeah, and do you remember when they said, those people said there were going to be loads of riots all over the country one weekend? Nothing happened. Yeah, where do they manufacture those things? Because the banners, I think I know where, but it's the same banners that they use for the Palestinian marches, isn't it? The same structure, the same. But no one picked up on that maybe the far left are doing these things as well. And I think that's a very good point to make, Chopper. Thank you indeed for making it. Well, what a week. We've talked about loads of stuff, haven't we? And you've been very generous in your donations, so thank you for that. If you want to finish the week on that, feel free. Send me a super chat, a super sticker on YouTube. You can start, I think, at £1 there and go up to whatever you want to go up to. Or alternatively, go to www.buymeacoffee.com/Jon Gaunt. No, www.buymeacoffee.com/Jon Gaunt, or you can buy a beer instead, right? Been great talking to you. I've done enough this week. I'm now going to go and have a rub down with a socialist worker. That's the newspaper, not a person. And obviously enjoy Coventry tonight. I hope it's a great match. If you're coming down from Sunderland, Middlesbrough, sorry, let's hope it's a great match. We've beaten you. I think we've hammered you the last 6 times we played you, so should be pretty easy. Melanie Davis, I'm only going to read this out because I think it's an excellent point. She says, Starmer staying for 19 seconds and not talking to the people didn't help, in my opinion. I think that's a great point, yeah. He basically took the wreath, it was all symbolic, and then he ran away. And when people started giving him abuse, he ran away. See, I don't think even Tony Blair, I'm not Tony Blair's biggest fan, I think he'd have stayed there and spoken to them and said, because it was never going to escalate there, was it? Do you understand what I mean by that? A real man, a real leader would say, I mean, I know I've got a downer on Starmer, but it's just that everything he touches turns to what. And Southport was a massive miscalculation. And then he did the thing about far-right thugs. And then he did the thing about locking up people for hurty words. And even in this constabulary report, you'll find if you look in the Daily Mail today, there's reports about it, or look in the Telegraph, the Daily Telegraph, you'll see what this report's about. But there's this kind of agenda. Let's lock down on the internet, and also, we'll do it all through the lamestream media. Just one word. They're living in a different age. They're living in a completely different world. Peter Fox. Yes, Starmer should have told the truth in the first place, instead of blaming everyone and calling them far right. Nice comment, Peter. Thank you very much on YouTube for that. Okay, I'm off. Oh, we got 10 likes. That's brilliant. Over the weekend, if you see friends and relatives or at the football, tell them all Gaunty's back. Best place to find me, and it's dead simple to remember this, it's Jon Gaunt TV. Just put that into YouTube channel, and my videos and everything else will pop up, and then you can find the connections to my Twitter and everything else from there. So Jon Gaunt TV. Remember, there's no H in John, but even if you put an H in, it'll find you. Have a great weekend, everybody. Look forward to seeing you on Monday at 6:30 for another Jon Gaunt show. Thank you for helping me make this a success. It really is appreciated. That's nice, Chopper. He says, have a nice weekend, John. I'm intending to. I'll speak to you later then. If you've got kids, give them a kiss, give them a hug. Don't forget to tell them